everyone, and welcome back to another Game of Thrones breakdown. We find out some fascinating secrets, meet up with some old favorites, and even get a Game of Thrones version of the A-Team. With that, let's dive into Season 7, Episode 5, Eastwatch. Blackwater Rush. Somehow, Bronn managed to drag Jaime underwater hundreds of meters downstream from where they fell in the river, and no one managed to find them. Yeah, okay, I'm not really surprised about this, since Jaime needs to get back to Cersei and all. Bronn saving Jaime is mostly so he can get his promised reward, but I'd like to think Bronn likes Jaime a little more than that. Jaime is terrified of Daenerys, recognizing that this was only a small taste of the destruction she can rain down on King's Landing. It's one thing hearing about dragons, it's a whole other story actually seeing what they can do. As Tyrion walks through the ashes of the battlefield, the remaining soldiers are brought before Daenerys. She offers them a choice, join her or die, though not before trying to tell them that she isn't like Cersei. She doesn't want to murder. My guess is that this is her saying, hey, look at my giant fire-breathing dragon, see this? I got 3 of these. I could easily wipe you all out, but I'm better than that. Most bend the knee, but Randall and Dick and Tarly, who managed to live through that battle, refuse. Randall is stubborn as ever. He will support Cersei over Daenerys since Cersei is Westerosi born and doesn't use foreign soldiers to fight her battles. Man, if only he knew that Cersei was planning to hire the Golden Company. Have to wonder how political D&D are when it comes to Randall's stance on foreigners, though. Although Tyrion tries to find some compromise, ultimately the Tarlys decide not to bend the knee and instead choose death. But rather than a quick beheading, Dany decides there wasn't enough fire already and commands Drogon to burn them alive, leaving nothing but ash. Naturally, the rest of those who were uncertain bend the knee to her, and it's obvious Tyrion doesn't agree with how Dany handled the situation. They refuse to go to the wall, which is usually the other way out of a death sentence. It's too bad Tyrion didn't mention the army of the dead to Randall Tarly. I wonder if those would have counted as foreign invaders. And yeah, Tyrion, war sucks. People die. Obviously, there are going to be some hard choices to be made here. But I mean, considering her options, I think Dany did a decent job. She only attacked the soldiers, they offered them a choice to join her, explained why she wanted Cersei off the throne, and, by using an extremely showy death, she managed to scare the rest of the soldiers into bending the knee. She's efficient, if nothing else. King's Landing. Jaime gets back to King's Landing and he immediately goes to Cersei. The first words out of her mouth are about how many men they've lost. And you can just tell by how exasperated Jaime is, like, really? That's your first concern? Not, hi, I'm glad you're okay? Jaime tries to convince Cersei of the threat that Daenerys poses. This isn't a war they can win. Cersei counters back. Cersei sits on the Iron Throne that once belonged to the Targaryens, and Jaime murdered her father. Dany isn't exactly going to want to debate with them. When Cersei sarcastically says that Tyrion could vouch for them in penance for his kinslaying, Jaime tells her Olenna was the one who killed Joffrey. This does nothing to sway Cersei, though. If it's between surrender and die or fight and die, she knows which one she would rather do. This is very much in character for Cersei. Back in Season 2, she was willing to kill herself and Tommen with a poison, rather than be captured by Stannis' men. While she most certainly would have been killed, it's possible Stannis would have pardoned Tommen due to his young age. By taking her son's life, Cersei would have ensured that Stannis would never win what was hers. If Cersei was able to use wildfire once, perhaps she'll use it again, in a similar manner to the Mad King. Perhaps Dany won't burn down King's Landing, but Cersei certainly could. Maybe this will be the way that Jaime kills her. He won't let the sacrifice he once made happen again, even if that means killing the woman he loves. Dragonstone. Jon is on the cliffs of Dragonstone, which seems to have taken over from the King's Landing Gardens as the most common place to have meetings, when Dany returns on Drogon. At first, Drogon is super intimidating, but Jon stands his ground and manages to calm him down. Drogon is kinda acting like a puppy getting petted, and Dany definitely takes notice of this. It's one thing for a dragon to respect you, like how Viserion and Rhaegal didn't eat Tyrion in the Pyramid of Meereen, but this behavior is different. Most of us assume that the dragon recognizes Jon's Targaryen heritage. This was part of the reason why the Targaryens intermarried. They wanted to keep that connection of the dragons within the bloodline. This is the show's way of also showing that Dany is really beginning to form a connection to Jon. The dragons are connected to Dany's emotions. Therefore, Drogon sensing that Jon Snow is a trustworthy person reflects Dany's growing feelings for him. Dany awkwardly asks about that time Davos mentioned Jon getting stabbed, but before he can dodge the question, Captain Jorah, has made it to Dragonstone. It's a bit of an awkward meeting, not just with the weird threesome here. Jon mentions serving with Jorah's father at the Wall, but Jorah definitely makes sure not to mention Ned Stark. Ned was the one responsible for Jorah's banishment from Westeros, after all. Plus, Jorah isn't stupid. He, more than anyone, knows when someone is interested in Daenerys. Well, either way, Dany's got 2 hot guys to choose between now. I'm really surprised that Jorah didn't mention Sam being the one to cure him. Jon is Sam's best friend, and that would have been all the more to help Dany trust Jon. On the other hand, though, Dany just burned 2 lords named Tarly, and what are the odds Sam would be related to them? Yeah, that might have caused some tension. Tarly's a common name, right? My guess is that this might pop up later. I doubt they would take the time to set up the Tarlys saying their names before Daenerys without it serving a plot later on down the line. Especially considering what Sam stumbles upon later, any information that would break up the possible romance between Dany and Jon might be relevant later next season. Winterfell. Bran wargs into a flock of ravens and uses them to scout beyond the Wall. There we see another castle of the Wall, Eastwatch by the Sea, where Tormund and the Wildling army was sent by Jon. Bran scouts further ahead and sees that the army of the dead is approaching the castle. When the Night King spots the ravens, he's able to force Bran out of the raven and back into his original body. Hard to say if this is because of the connection made between Bran and the Night King, or if that's something he could have done to the original Three-Eyed Raven as well. Bran tells Maester Wolkan to send messages about what he saw. I wonder how much power the Night King has when it comes to warging. We know that he was physically able to touch Bran when he was using the green sight, but since that was the first time he was able to break through the Three-Eyed Raven's magic, perhaps the Night King doesn't have the ability to warg himself, only the power to push that ability back or manipulate one who's already using it. There's still so much that we don't know about the Night King, or the others, and the only 2 who knew about them, Leaf and Bloodraven, are dead. I was really hoping we would get to see more flashback visions from Bran this season, but man, there has been a real lack of it. Hopefully Bran will finish his iOS update soon so he can get back to that. Old Town. At the Citadel, the Maesters are discussing the message Bran sent to them, warning them about the incoming army of the dead. When Sam walks in to drop off some books, he happens to overhear them and vouches for Bran. Although Ebrose hears him out, he ultimately thinks that this could be a plot by Daenerys to send the armies north so she can take King's Landing, but he is willing to send a raven to Wolkan again for a better explanation. Sam is upset by this and storms out. The other Maesters then reveal that although they've gotten word about Sam's father and brother's deaths, Ebrose hasn't told Sam to spare him the tragedy. Kind of a dick move, and something you would think he'd want to know about. You have to wonder then if they think Sam would have left, since Randall has no other male heirs, and since Ebrose has taken a liking to Sam, doesn't want him to abandon his becoming a Maester. Though since Sam has already disinherited himself and joined the Night's Watch, that wouldn't be likely, but hey, if Jon Snow can do it, why can't Sam? Fans are probably wondering why the heck Randall never went to Old Town to get his Valyrian sword back. He knew exactly where Sam was going, and it wouldn't have been that hard for him to find him at the Citadel. My in-universe guess is that Olenna and then Cersei had called the Tarlys to arms before he could retrieve it, but actual reason is that Sam is going to need that Valyrian sword for the upcoming War for the Dawn. Really, Tarly didn't send someone to go get his most prized possession that was stolen from him? Yeah, that seems super out of character. Well, he's dead now. Gotta wonder how Sam will take the news. He probably won't be all that upset about his father, but he seemed to love his brother at the very least, so that sucks. Dragonstone. Again. Tyrion and Varys discuss the events of the battle, with Tyrion trying to rationalize Dany's choices while Varys gets upset. We get a little more insight into his personality. He too would rationalize when the Mad King would burn people alive. It wasn't him doing it. It's obvious Dany's antics are getting to him, and he is trying to get Tyrion to talk to Dany and convince her to avoid further burning. Hopefully Varys is actually keeping to his word this time and avoiding trying to scheme. He isn't exactly telling Dany what he thinks of her, but perhaps it's early enough that he hopes Tyrion will be able to talk some sense into her. I'm really hoping Varys isn't killed by Dany. I love him and his sass too much. When Jon gets a letter, he's made aware of both Bran and Arya's return to Winterfell, as well as the vision that Bran saw. Jon wants to return to the north to fight the army at Eastwatch, even if they don't have the men for it. Dany doesn't want to leave for the north without having taken King's Landing, though. Tyrion comes up with a plan. Bring a White down to King's Landing to prove to Cersei that the threat is real. Varys makes a good point, though. How are they gonna get an audience? Tyrion thinks that he can meet with Jaime. He's the only person who could possibly convince Cersei. To get into King's Landing secretly, though, he's going to need a smuggler. Oh Sir Davos. They would still need a white, which will require a trip beyond the wall. Jorah offers to go, as well as Jon, in order to have the help of the wildlings. Dany doesn't want Jon to go, but he makes a good argument for it, and she reluctantly agrees. Aw, looks like she's gonna miss him too. So yeah, seems like one of my guesses was right. The raid beyond the wall is so they can capture a white. In the books, they do actually try to do this. A hand is cut off from a white and sent to King's Landing, but by the time it reaches the capital, it's completely decomposed. If a whole body is taken, maybe it won't rot? The temperature is getting colder due to winter, so it won't be nearly as warm for the majority of the journey, so this could work out after all. Winterfell, again. Sansa listens to the Northern Lords complain about Jon leaving, and based on her exasperated-looking face, this isn't the first time. Arya listens and later complains to Sansa that she didn't stick up for Jon when he was being insulted. Sansa tries to explain that she doesn't want to offend them and lose their men for the army, but Arya suddenly goes creepy and says Sansa's planning just in case Jon doesn't come back. From her tone, it would seem that Arya is insinuating this is what Sansa wants. Ugh. I don't like that the show is trying to paint Sansa in this light. Arya is thinking that Sansa is greedy and wanted their parents' room for herself, which we know last season she tried to offer to Jon. Arya just wants to cut the heads off of anyone who disagrees with her, while Sansa rightly points out that this will not get the men to work together. We know this from when Robb killed the Karstarks. Sansa is learning from her family's mistakes and doing her best to try to keep Winterfell together. I hope this isn't just my Sansa and Arya biases here. Like, seriously, Arya, you're mad that Sansa has a contingency plan in case Jon doesn't come back when he's meeting with a Targaryen? Oh, boo-hoo. Stop trying to make Sansa look like she's being selfish. She isn't. All she wanted was equal respect from Jon and to keep her family safe. King's Landing, again. Davos and Tyrion arrive in King's Landing, briefly mentioning how Tyrion's wildfire plan got Davos' son killed back in Season 2. Nice to see that just glossed over. Bronn brings Jaime down to the room with the dragon skulls, and we see that it seems he's been contacted by Tyrion. How exactly? I mean, maybe Tyrion spotted Bronn at the battlefield, so he knew Bronn was working with the Lannisters, but how in the world did he contact him? I'm guessing Varys might have still had some contacts in King's Landing? It's a bit of an awkward family reunion. Tyrion tries to explain why he killed Tywin, and Jaime doesn't want to hear any of that. When Tyrion tells him Dany wants to negotiate, Jaime says Cersei's not going to surrender, but Tyrion says that isn't what she wants to discuss. We cut to Flea Bottom, where lo and behold, Davos finds Gendry. It only took 4 seasons. Jeez. Without really needing to go into too much detail, it seems Gendry is just as anxious as the audience about him coming along. It's almost like he knows there's only a few episodes left and time is of the essence. You could exposit off screen. Seems like Gendry was working as a blacksmith and even had some time to make a warhammer. It's a nice tribute to his father. After Melisandre revealed his parentage to him, Gendry really seems to have taken a liking to his namesake. The hammer is decorated with a stag, after all. And Robert was known for his warhammer. It's what killed Rhaegar at the Trident, after all. They return to the beach, where Gendry must be real happy to see another rowboat. Some guards approach, and Davos gets to show off his awesome smuggling skills and how he is able to charm them. Unfortunately, just as they're leaving, Tyrion shows up and they recognize him. But Gendry shows off his swing and kills them. Damn! Well, he certainly can hold his own. Very useful for a fight. Jaime goes to see Cersei, and she's having a conversation with Qyburn. After he leaves, Jaime tells Cersei he met up with Tyrion, and that Dany wants to truce to discuss the coming army of the dead. Cersei's first reaction is to question if Jaime will punish Bronn for his treachery, which answers what Qyburn was talking to her about earlier. Seems like he's taking after Varys quite well. Cersei believes that it might be in their best interest to hear out Dany, since she has the clear advantage. They need to attack this like father, she says, which is rather worrisome. Tywin was responsible for the Red Wedding. Perhaps Cersei is planning a similar deception when Dany would be most vulnerable? And that's not the only thing. Looks like Cersei is pregnant with Jaime's child, and she says she won't hide who the father is from the public. What's interesting here is Jaime quoting Tywin, "The lion doesn't consider the opinions of the sheep." This isn't the first time this season we've heard mentions of sheep. Arya mentioning the wolf going after the sheep at the twins, and Olenna telling Dany she's not a sheep but a dragon. really shows who the three major players are in this game: the dragons, the lions, and the wolves. Jaime is ecstatic about Cersei's pregnancy, but Cersei tells him never to betray her again. Oh boy. So I very much doubt that she will actually have this baby. Maggie the Frog told Cersei she would have 3 children who would all die before her. The show did actually include that part of the prophecy as well, so either 1, Cersei is lying about the pregnancy to get Jaime back on her side, 2, Cersei will die while pregnant so it doesn't count, or 3, my most likely guess, she's going to have a miscarriage. The reason I think this is the most likely is that Cersei needs to fall. This child is her last hope at continuing her family legacy. We've been waiting and waiting for Jaime to finally slip away from Cersei, but he just keeps making excuses for her behavior over and over again. If she finally cracks due to the loss of her child, maybe he will finally come around. Interestingly, the Valonqar part of the prophecy was left out of the show, the part where the little brother will strangle her to death. Perhaps the miscarriage could result in Cersei dying? I doubt that'll happen, but I guess it's kind of poetic. Jaime's child being the reason for her death would still fit, though it doesn't seem like a fitting ending for Cersei. Dragonstone. Final. Davos already told Gendry to keep his parentage on the down low, so most likely on the boat ride over, he explained who Dany was and why she might not be too keen on the usurper's child. When they meet up with Jon Snow, Gendry immediately tells Jon who he is and tells him he wants to go with him. They both grew up hearing stories of their father's exploits, and Gendry wants to help Jon after hearing about the army of the dead. You gotta love the look on Gendry's face. He basically walks up to Jon and asks to be his best friend. Poor Davos. All he wanted to do was make sure Gendry wouldn't be near any fighting. Jon agrees to take Gendry with him beyond the wall. At the shore, Tyrion has a nice fun reunion with Jorah, even saying he missed his glowering. Aww. Then Dany comes and gives him another heartfelt goodbye. Aww, the feels. And finally, Jon Snow says goodbye, specifically, I wish you good fortune in the wars to come. Well shit, that's not good. The last 2 people to say that were Mance Rayder and Arthur Dayne right before they died. So the show is trying really hard to hint that Jon's gonna die. Yeah, okay, sure, kill him off and bring him back only to kill him off again? I doubt it. But nice callbacks. Jorah does look back at Dany, which tells me he isn't long for this world. Old Town, again. While Sam is copying down notes, Gilly keeps bothering him with random tidbits of info from the book she's reading. I know it's annoying him, but it's so cute how proud she is that she can read now. Unfortunately, just as she's about to finish reading the single most important sentence ever, Sam gets angry at her and shuts her up. Looks like Gilly managed to find the single passage in the whole Citadel collection that shows Rhaegar Targaryen divorced his wife Elia and secretly married Lyanna Stark in Dorne. That makes Jon a rightful heir to the Iron Throne now, and actually a stronger contender than Daenerys. Unfortunately, since Sam isn't paying much attention and Gilly doesn't use all the right names, he misses it completely. Well, looks like this is going to be something to pop up in Season 8. Fed up, Sam sneaks back into the restricted section one more time to steal more books and scrolls. How in the world does he know what he's grabbing? He's just pulling at random stuff in the dark. No wonder he hasn't gotten anywhere. He hasn't been checking titles. He, Gilly, and baby Sam pack up their stuff and leave Old Town. Sam knows there isn't a lot of time left before he can help fight the White Walkers, and he needs to get back to Jon. Hopefully Gilly kept that book she was reading. That's gonna be useful. I hope that Sam made an impression on Ebrose. Ebrose really did seem to believe in Sam, but Ebrose's logic prevents him from truly listening to Sam's advice. My guess is that once word reaches Ebrose about either the wall falling or the whites being used to prove the army of the dead is real, maybe he will actually follow Sam's advice and send warning ravens to the rest of the kingdom. I really did like Jim Broadbent a lot in this role, and you understand where he's coming from. Like Dany's reaction to Jon, Ebrose is giving real-world context to a fantastical problem. Hopefully we see him recognize that Sam's warnings weren't false. Winterfell. Final. Arya spies on Littlefinger throughout Winterfell, and at first I did wonder how the heck he wasn't noticing her. She listens to him as Wolkan gives Littlefinger a scroll, claiming it's the only copy. Littlefinger then says Lady Stark thanks him for this, and he enters his room to hide it. Arya sneaks in and finds it. It's a copy of the letter Sansa was forced to write to Robb after King Robert's death, the one where she begs them to swear loyalty to Joffrey despite Ned being a traitor. Arya looks upset and leaves the room, where we see Littlefinger watching her from the shadows. Looks like it was him playing her all along. I'm really unhappy with where this plot is going. There's only two ways this can kinda go. Scenario 1. Arya is actually that stupid and Baelish is trying to plot the sisters against each other because sure, why not? I doubt Arya would actually kill Sansa over this, though she may not know the context for the letter. Originally, Luwin recognized that Sansa had the words dictated to her by Cersei, but Arya doesn't know and might think her sister has always been scheming. While this scenario shows that Arya isn't as amazing as she thinks she is, I think it's sort of a weak plot to focus on. Plus, all we need is Bran to conveniently remember Littlefinger's misdeeds to get rid of this problem. Scenario 2. Arya is double faking Littlefinger and working together with Sansa. Sansa knows exactly how Littlefinger works, what he's expecting, and Sansa might remember the letter written to Luwin as well. I mean, if Baelish could know about it, Sansa certainly could remember. This is just a plot to catch Littlefinger in the act and then give them a legitimate reason to throw him out or kill him. Again, if Bran informs the sisters about his misdeeds, they might be trying to find a way to prove what he's done. Either way, I just don't like what they're doing. Either Arya is a complete idiot and just refuses to have a conversation with her sister, or, once again, she's an amazing super spy who can trick anyone. The show is just trying to give us another subplot to focus on to try and create tension, but it isn't really working for me here. Again, more examples of the, well, if they just did this one thing, the entire plot unravels. Eastwatch. You think Jon would be smart enough to send a raven to Sansa, updating her on his travels, but so far we've seen no word. Nice job, Jon. Jon meets up with Tormund. Interesting to see that there was no infighting at Eastwatch despite an army of wildlings approaching, but hey, whatever. The castle looks pretty abandoned for the most part anyway. When Tormund asks how many men were brought, he also inquires about Brienne. Aw, he's in deep. I'm now worried he's going to die. Fuck. Tormund tells them that he found people near the wall. It looks like Beric, Thoros, and the Hound were thrown in the cells. It's a bit of a weird set of reunions. Jon recognizes the Hound from his visit at Winterfell, Gendry recognizes Thoros and Beric from his time with the Brotherhood, Jorah knows Beric and Thoros from their days together as knights, and when Tormund hears Jorah's last name, he finds out Jorah was the former Lord Commander's son. Tensions seem high when the Hound says what we're all thinking. Fuck off, we're all just gonna travel together, let's go. Thank you, Sandor Clegane! So, with Davos staying behind at Eastwatch, we now have the Westerosi version of the A-Team. Jon Snow, Tormund, Gendry, the Hound, Thoros, Beric Dondarrion, and Jorah Mormont. The last shot is of the group leaving beyond the wall. Oh boy, you can tell this was a setup episode compared to last week's big battle. We're setting up for the last major plots for this season. The armistice between Dany and Cersei, the tensions between Arya and Sansa, and Jon Snow finally getting off Dragonstone and doing something useful. It was really nice to see Gendry return, and man, he's been really working out a lot with how well he swings that hammer. A couple new revelations. Bronn is still loyal to Tyrion enough to trick Jaime. Cersei's now pregnant, assuming she's not lying. Littlefinger has finally something to do. And Gilly found the information Sam needed to find, but wasn't aware of how important it was. The death of the Tarleys seems like setup for future disagreements, but mostly just more extraneous character cleanup. And hey, Jon got to pet a dragon. That's cool. Preview. We get shots of the Magnificent Seven walking beyond the wall. One important shot is the mountain in the distance. This is most likely the one that the Hound saw in his vision. It looks a little bit like the mountain in the background in the flashback to the creation of the White Walkers. Could the Land of Always Winter maybe not always have been that way? Perhaps it too, like the rest of the world, had seasons of both summer and winter. Dany is in the council room looking rather angry. Maybe it's her worrying about Jorah and Jon, but to me this looks more angry than worried. Perhaps Varys is going to do something stupid after all. I hope not. Jon sees the army of the dead coming, and we get some great shots of the group huddled together with their weapons drawn. I wonder if Jorah will recognize Longclaw. The pommel is different, but a Valyrian sword is still rather distinctive. We see a shot of Sansa going into her room, while audio of Arya says, "You're scared, aren't you?" suggesting Arya is telling this to Sansa. I think this is a misdirect, and that Arya is telling this to maybe Littlefinger. I really, really hope I'm not wrong on this one. It makes no sense for them to be fighting amongst themselves. Or perhaps, since the next shots are of whites, this is Arya talking to Bran about being afraid of the Night King. Next is a ton more action shots. The Hound fighting a white with what appears to be Gendry's hammer. Hopefully that's not a sign of Gendry getting killed. Maybe he just tosses it to the Hound at one point? We see Gendry fighting and looking like he's doing okay. Jon is fighting another White Walker with his Valyrian sword. Gotta have those cool shots of him taking down the White Walkers. We then see a group of people coming through a gate of the wall. It's really difficult to tell exactly who they are, and if this is at Castle Black or Eastwatch, they are in wildling garb, so most likely it's some of the men at Eastwatch seeing the approaching army of the dead. Perhaps the raid doesn't go as well as we would like. The one in the middle might be Davos, but it's kinda hard to tell. Arya looks at Sansa menacingly, while Sansa looks back at her kind of scared. Perhaps it's Arya confronting her about the letter? Not much here I didn't already talk about. We get Beric lighting up his flame sword again. Fuck yeah! We see presumably an earlier shot of the group running from the army of the dead toward a rock to gain higher ground. Looks like it's taking a toll on them too. And finally, we see the Night King arriving onto the scene. Perhaps we'll see him actually fight somebody. We've only ever seen him watching a battle and raising the dead. It'll be interesting to see how he does in an actual fight. Okay, so of the 7, who stands the best chance of living? Well, I'd say Jon Snow, Gendry, and the Hound will probably live. Jon Snow because, obviously, he needs to get back to Winterfell and Daenerys. Gendry, since I really hope he gets to have a reunion with Arya back at Winterfell. And the Hound because he's awesome, and it would be rather nice to have him see Sansa is alive and well again. He did seem to care about her in the earlier seasons, even if it is kinda weird. It would make for a nice character arc for him, though. Beric and Thoros really don't have much else to do, so it won't surprise me to see them go. Tormund is amazing and funny, but I don't know if he's actually going to be able to make it back to Brienne again. It wouldn't surprise me if he dies, since he's more used as comic relief lately anyway. And finally, Jorah. Well, I expected him to be dead anyway, and he's throwing himself into a really fucking dangerous place. If the show wants to push the Dany-Jon romance, then having Jorah be around to distract her wouldn't make a ton of sense. He's incredibly important to Daenerys, and it would be really tragic to see him die in this way for her. So his would make the most sense if he does die, and hell, knowing him, he might even end up becoming the very White they need to prove that the dead are real. So, who do you think will make it out of this battle alive? Are Arya and Sansa truly distrustful of one another, or is it all a ruse to lure out Littlefinger into the open? Will the guys be successful in obtaining a White? But if so, will Eastwatch be overrun? How long will it be before the info Gilly found becomes relevant? Is Cersei actually pregnant? And will Cersei and Dany actually have a truce, or are we just preparing for more tricky bullshit? Post your thoughts and comments below. I'm really curious to see what you guys think is going to happen next episode. It's the penultimate for the season, so you know something important is going to happen. Well, I'm Calluna, and thanks for tuning in to another Game of Thrones breakdown. See ya! Hey everyone, just wanted to let you know I have a Patreon page. If you're not familiar with Patreon by now, it's a website that allows you to donate a small amount each month to your favorite content creators. You'll get a bunch of different rewards depending on the amount that you donate. Feel free to check out my page to see what kind of rewards that you can get by helping to donate. Every little bit helps, and helps to make this show even better, so wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. Thanks.
Geek Vision.